welcome to our Deltek Expert webinar. My name is Sullivan Sanders, a marketing coordinator here at Action Associates. Just some quick housekeeping items. Today's webinar will be recorded, so you are muted, and I will be sending out the recording by end of day tomorrow. During the presentation, please utilize the Q&A feature to ask any questions if needed, and we will answer them during the Q&A session at the end. And if you experience any technical issues during the webinar, you may also use that Q&A feature, and we will try to assist you. With that, let me go ahead and introduce today's presenter, Don Brown. He's a senior consultant here at Action Associates. I'll hand it on over to you, Don.
Awesome. Thanks, Sullivan. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning. Like Sully said, I'm a senior consultant here at Action Associates. I've been with the firm for about 4 years. I was a Vision user prior to that, and for a long time, probably 15 years. So Vision was near and dear to my heart, but we're going to be talking about kind of making that move from Vision to Vantagepoint. And we're really going to be focusing in on the readiness report. So like Sully said, you can put the questions in the Q&A. We're not going to kill you with a bunch of PowerPoint presentations today. We're going to go through the PowerPoint presentation pretty quickly here, and then we're going to dive into the actual report itself, talk about some of the areas, right? So first of all, what is the readiness report? Readiness report is a proprietary report that Action has created that basically does a snapshot of your Vision environment. It gives us information like, duplicate clients and vendors, all of your security roles, how many people are in them. So we're going to walk through each of those tabs today. It is really where most of our clients, the majority of our clients, start their process from Vision to Vantagepoint. So that way they can really get their database crisp and clean, and then just to talk about some of the innate changes that have to happen from a Vision to Vantagepoint upgrade. So, how does Action get that information from you, right? So whether you're in the cloud or you're on premises, if you're in the cloud, we do that through the cloud solution. So we request a database backup. And if you're on premises, we work with your local IT or your internal IT or maybe third-party IT. And usually your Vision administrator to get access to your database. It usually takes us a couple of days to spin that up and then kind of spit that back out to you. So today we are going to review tab by tab everything that comes in that readiness report. Some of the things that we talk about, things that you're going to want to focus in on are, all the things we have in our database that we maybe not necessarily have the time or doesn't become a priority to, clean up your client and your vendor duplicates, right? We'll talk about the client and vendor merge process because they are merged in Vantagepoint. We're going to take a look at our demo database in Vantagepoint as well. If you're using project planning, the non-compliant plans. So planning is very different from Vision to Vantagepoint with guardrails, and we'll kind of talk about that as well. And if you're using CRM and you're using opportunities, any opportunity issues, they can range from multiple opportunities tied to the same project, an opportunity not tied to a project at all, right? We'll go through some of those scenarios. Talk about your favorite reports and your saved searches, how they come over into Vantagepoint, how you can identify them. And then we're going to just go right into a demo here. So like we said, that your first step in your journey is getting confidence, right, with your data. And that first step is that Vantagepoint readiness assessment and report. So like I said, once we get access to your Vision, we will spin up a report and it will come out to you. And that report is in an Excel format. This is a kind of sample one here. So I'm actually going to make this a little bigger because I felt everybody collectively lean into their computers. So this first tab here is just your general info, right? What database version are you in? What is your client number? Do you have multi-currency or multi-company enabled? Any of the modules that you currently have licensing for, right? And the licensing and the module codes. Your number of security roles. How many people are in any of those security roles? Ones that are maybe inactive or don't have anybody in there, right? So taking a look and seeing, do we need to bring some of those security roles over into Vantagepoint, or do we want to clean them up in Vision? And again, they're just going to be down the bottom here. So one of the things we want to identify is all of your custom grids and your fields. So the way it works from Vision to Vantagepoint, so any custom field, any user-defined field or grid that is on a standard tab within your Vision environment, they all come over. So you don't lose any data. They will come over. They will get thrown to the bottom of what used to be called the General tab in Vision, now called the Overview tab in Vantagepoint. And then we will then take those and kind of maneuver them back. So one of the things that we do is if you partner with us and you use us to kind of do your upgrade from Vision to Vantagepoint, one of the sessions is design. How to take all those fields and redesign them to go back where they need to go on the tabs. So it'll take you through each of the info centers. So just a terminology change from Vision to Vantagepoint. In Vision, they're info centers. In Vantagepoint, they are hubs. So when you hear us talking about hubs, it's the same thing as an info center. So clients, right, it'll tell us the name of the custom grid or field, right, what type of field it is, what the label of it is, right? So, and a lot of times, you know, like I said, I was in Vision for 15 years. And sometimes the clients are ahead of Deltek, right? But with tracking some information, whether it's I want to track somebody's birthday or somebody's spouse information, right? Those aren't standard fields, right? So then we create these user-defined fields to accommodate for that, right? So anniversaries, announcements, birth dates, right? Some of that in your contacts. Under your employees, right? So this is going to go through and list all of your different custom fields and grids. So I do want to talk about opportunities. So if you are using opportunities in Vision, opportunities don't exist in Vantagepoint. So what I mean by that is there's not an info center for opportunities. There is a lot of shared information in Vision between your opportunity info center and your project info center. So in Vantagepoint, there's just one regular project that you're taking through stages like you would take an opportunity through stages. So in that regular project, and I'm going to demo some of that today for you because you can see it. I'm a very visual learner as well. So for me, having to see it kind of put some pieces together for me. But really the biggest changes from Vision to Vantagepoint are the project lifecycle in Vantagepoint. You know, there's bits and pieces of the opportunity within that record in Vantagepoint, but there's not really a true opportunity hub anymore. So all the fields that you have, custom fields, they'll come over. They actually come over with like OPP in front of the captions. That way you can tell which ones came from your opportunity info center and which ones came from your project info center. So again, as you scroll down this list here, I'm hitting project plans. I got projects, vendors. We'll also talk about vendors and clients just because that's another big change from Vision to Vantagepoint. So those are custom fields. Down below here are custom grids. So maybe we have a couple, you know, all the grids down here. So this just documents them for us so that way we can account for them when we go into our preview environment. The next tab over is any workflows. So standard workflows like time and expense workflows. When you get into Vantagepoint, you have absence requests, workflows, you have purchase order workflows. So this here is just listing the current workflows you have in your Vision environment. And really, we just want to make sure that we have them listed here. And then obviously, when we kind of partner up and work together, these are things that we test to make sure are still working, right? Because some things, you know, email alerts might need to be updated because the email alert might reference Vision as opposed to Vantagepoint. If it's a stored procedure, that might need to be redone just because it's pointing towards a Vision database instead of a Vantagepoint database. So this gives us the full list here that we can work from to make sure that we can kind of go through and say, yep, these all work. And it's also a really good time to clean house. Right? Am I still using some of these workflows? Or, you know, like I said, if you've been with Vision for that many years, the number of iterations of leadership have changed, right? So some of the priorities have changed. So some of them may not be used or may not have value anymore. So it's a good time to look at everything and also make an assessment to say, we're not using that. We can actually just delete that and we'll build something new in Vantagepoint. So you can see, right, if it's active. So every workflow you set up and then it has actions behind it, right? So We can actually see which ones are active, which ones you have that are there that may be inactive, right? And those are the ones we might take a look at and say, do we really need those anymore? Now we're getting into like data cleanup, right? So the next one over here is potential duplicates. So again, this is just a sample here. And this really is a matter of how many people do you have adding clients, vendors into your database, because that's going to probably impact the size of this tab. This particular one looks really clean, right? There's only a handful here where I can see that I've got 2 clients that have different IDs, but the same name, right? So in the case where I want to merge or key convert data, you can actually do that in Vision prior to your go live. So this, we're kind of going to switch back between Vision and the report and even Vantagepoint today. So if I want to see if I want to go into my clients, and again, this will be identified on the report, so you won't have to come in here to look for it. But if I come in here and I do a search, I can see that I have 2 Andersons, one with an LLC with little, lowercase, and one LLC capitalized. So if I want to combine them in Vision, so that way I don't have 2 records coming over into Vantagepoint, that is under your key conversions, under your utilities. So depending on your security role, you may or may not have access to this just because it is kind of a powerful tool. So if I come into my utilities and I go to key conversions, I can then come down and see my clients. And then if I want to insert here, and I want to say, and this one here, the way it works is that as you are typing in information, right, you want to pick the one over here that says new client, you'll be combined into that. You don't lose anything. So if the other one has multiple addresses in there, all the addresses, basically this is combining 2 records into one. So I want the LLC large caps to be the one that I'm going to retain. So I'm going to say this one here is going to go into this one here. And I want to combine those records and then run the tool. And then once I run the tool, and it takes just about a minute, then I just have the 1 Anderson in my database. Works the same way with vendors. So when you get your report, you see duplicate clients and vendors, first thing you want to do is kind of clean those up, right? So if I come down into my key conversions and I go down to vendors, and you can see you can combine records or you can change the number of our records. So I'm going to combine my records because I want to take 2 and make them into 1. And again, you want to insert that. And in this one here, I have 2 FedExes, one that's full Federal Express and one that's FedEx. So I want to keep and retain the full Federal Express. So again, I want to pick this one and I want it to go into sorry, gang, this one's not working for some reason, but works the same way. I'm in a demo database in Vision, so sometimes it doesn't work exactly. We've all kind of done some things in here. But that'll take those 2 records and combine them down to 1. So that's the first step, is kind of getting the duplicates taken care of, right? So again, you have these listed out here. As you're kind of completing these, right, you can kind of mark them off your list here. The next one over is a little different. The next one over is client and vendor merge. So in Vantagepoint, they take your info centers for clients and vendors and they turn it into one hub called Firms. That Firms hub has records that are both shared. So vendors and clients that are the same. So in this one here, Carter and Associates, and a vendor that's sort of, so AAR, we want to combine them in the database. So you don't have to run a key conversion to do that. So first one will be the ones you already have that are existing associations, where you already have identified them as a client and a vendor, okay? To tag them in Vantagepoint or your Vision database, so that way they come over as one record into Vantagepoint, I'm going to pull my Vision back over here a second. So if FedEx was both a client and a vendor, right, I want to go into the client record. So when you are thinking about Vantagepoint and you're thinking about clients and vendors, client is always the lead, right? So you don't want to go into the vendor record and do anything. You want to go into the client record and you want to tag it here as a client and a vendor, and then save that. And that will then, when we pull your readiness report or when you pull your preview environment for your Vantagepoint, it will automatically pull those two into one record. So you want to definitely take care of the duplicates, the client and vendor merge, right? Again, it's going to pick up in the report anything that's sort of like it, right? Like the vendor name here is fully spelled out. This one here is Severin Lab. So if it's truly not the same company, don't combine them, right? Keep them separated and let them come over into Vantagepoint as two separate records. If you happen to miss this step and you miss a few, you can do the same thing in Vantagepoint where we can then combine the records and tag them both. So it's not like if you don't get it here, you're never going to have it right. There's recourse on the other side when you're in your preview environment and you're in your live database. It's going to identify any custom reports. So custom reports are reports. They're not your favorite reports. Favorite reports are standard reports that you've kind of manipulated to get the columns and groupings and options that you want, and that you save that as a favorite. Custom reports are reports that have been written for you by a specialist, by Action, by another third party partner to Deltek, and uploaded directly into your database. Those would need to be looked at just because they were pointing towards Vision, and we probably need to tweak them a little bit to get them to work directly and correctly in your Vantagepoint. So this would give you a list of those here. This particular one doesn't have any custom ones. Custom objects. So it's funny, when you get your email from our software engineer team, they basically say like this tab, the custom objects and table information, which just gives you the size of the database, is for like your database nerds, right? The people that are doing the IT stuff behind the scenes, just to kind of give you information to say like, wait a minute, like, why is that taking up so much space in my database? But for the day-to-day folks that are using the database, we're probably not going to spend much time on these tabs here. You also, when you get this report, you get an email and detailing each tab and like kind of what you want to look for and what you want to do on those tabs to kind of be prepared to make those corrections, cleanup, adjustments. It shows you the number of leads you have. So there is no lead info center in Vantagepoint. The leads are really part of the CRM and really more around your contacts in Vantagepoint. So if you have a lot of leads, we want to take a look at that as well. Key formats. This basically just tells us the numbering sequence for everything in your database, right? Like your projects, your opportunities, what is the auto length of that? 5 numbers. Do you use auto numbering? Yes or no? Gives us all the detail around, formatting for your employees, right? So it's 4 in length. Do you have leading zeros? Yes. So this gives us a snapshot of the kind of the numbering schema that you have for everything in the database, right? So project number, so WBS. So I always point this out just because you hear it a bunch of different ways. WBS means work breakdown structure, which out of the box from Deltek is project phase and task. But I've got lots of clients that kind of change that up and call it project task and subtask. I've got project billing group and subgroups, right? So really, as you can customize the database too, Vision and Vantagepoint, what you want to call something, you kind of handle with that within the labels. But this is just kind of documenting everything numbering schema-wise in your database. Whether you're using labor cross-charge or not, right? Works the same way, but we just want to know. This is probably where most people will spend a good bit of time here and on the opportunity. So if you are using planning in Vision, it is a different animal in Vantagepoint. So in Vision, you could have a standalone plan. You could have a different structure than you have on your project. You can manipulate rates and all kinds of stuff in the plan. That is different than Vantagepoint. Vantagepoint, everything starts with the project. So you can't get a plan without a project. The plan's work breakdown structure is automatically tied from the project itself. So a lot of the plan issues are when the system is looking at a plan coming over into Vantagepoint and the work breakdown structure isn't tied to the project, it's considered non-compliant. So as you kind of go through here, right, this one here, invalid WBS1 rows, it puts them in categories, right? This one doesn't have the correct WBS2 rows. So there must be things in this one that's not tied to the phase, that's tied to a project. Other things are multiple plans tied to one project. The system in Vantagepoint doesn't know how to handle that because it's a one-to-one relationship. So, this is where you want to spend some time. If you don't fix these, they don't come over into Vantagepoint. So I've got lots of clients that say, you know what? The work I have to do to clean them up isn't worth it. I let them come over. All your job to date information comes over, and then you can kind of pick it up and do the plan going forward. But it really depends on your size, right? If you got 500 projects, you probably don't want to replan all of those. So this will detail what the issues are, so that way you can go into the plans in Vision and rework them, so that way they are compliant, right? So each one of these headers is a different issue. They may have projects that have multiple issues, right? It might be the wrong project, doesn't have the right project number, doesn't have the right phase. The baseline might be mapped, right? So there's a bunch of different options in here. This one here is mapped to multiple projects. So it really is detailing for you every single issue that you want to take a look at. Now, with that being said, the planning in Vantagepoint is fantastic. The way that the user interface, the way you kind of can get in everything in one place, is, in my opinion, it's a huge upgrade from Vision. So even though there's a little work to do in Vision to get there, man, when you get there, it's really good. We'll also show you any unposted transaction files. So if you had like a transaction file out there from a year ago, or this will detail any unposted transaction, cash receipts, journal entries, invoices, right? Any of them. Any project and opportunity duplicates. This one here is the other big one, I would say, is opportunities. So if you are using opportunities in in Vision, again, it's a one-to-one relationship in Vantagepoint, one project. So a lot of the issues here would be that the opportunity is tied to, there's multiple opportunities tied to one project. So the system doesn't know what to do with that, right? And again, what happens is that if we don't kind of fix these, it creates duplicate regular projects in your database that they begin with the letter Z. That's how we can identify that they came over from your opportunities, right? So you can scroll down here, you can see in this one, there's a good bit of opportunities. And a lot of times it's not that we don't care about the opportunities, is that by the time, we win the work, sometimes people aren't going back and, updating the opportunities to awarded. They're not closing them, right? So they just kind of sit out there, in limbo, because at this point we've got the work, we're doing delivering the work for the client, and maybe we're not necessarily coming back and dealing with the opportunities. So it'll give you exactly what's wrong with the opportunities, allow you to kind of come through here and take a look at each of the situations and to clean those up. If you are using opportunities, and we have project codes on either side, on your project record and both in your opportunity, right? So if you've got, in maybe even called project type or project codes in this one here, you just want to make sure that your both lists are in alignment. So this is looking at your list and your drop downs to make sure that they kind of tie in. Because if they don't tie in, they won't collapse, and they'll create a second one, right? If this one was asbestos and lead consulting Inc., and this wasn't, it's going to create two codes, right? So you just want to make sure that description needs to match if they are going to be merged. Favorite reports. So favorite reports and your saved searches, all your favorite reports will come over from Vision to Vantagepoint. They will identify in Vantagepoint with a little red asterisk behind it to identify that it came over from Vision. Those reports will run, but you cannot get into any of the options. So if you need to update a new set of project managers in a report, or you need to change the date range in a report, all those reports need to be recreated in Vantagepoint. So what's nice is that and I'll show you in a little bit, on the favorites tab in Vantagepoint, it will show me the favorite reports with a little red asterisk behind it. It'll also show me what report it was built off of. So when you go live in Vantagepoint, you will have access to your Vision database for 60 days after go live. So during the process of the upgrade, right, you get your preview environment, you're working with us, you can start recreating reports at any time in Vantagepoint because they get retained through what's called the transfer settings. And I'll get into a little more detail about that, but they'll get retained so that way you can really start to hit the ground running day one and go live, right? So that way, I have a lot of clients that will say, I need these 10 reports at go live because they're the ones we kind of like live and die by. The other ones we can kind of recreate as needed as we go along. You just want to make sure that you do it within the 60 days because you want to be able to get back into Vision to see all the settings, right? The options and the selections that you had for those favorite reports. It's also a good time to go, are we still using these reports, right? Some of these people, are they even here anymore, right? So I can see that there's global reports, ones for admins, for individuals in here. It'll tell us the last time it was run, how many times it's been run. So this is a really good opportunity to say, oh man, out of 50 of them, we only use like 20 of them. And in Vantagepoint, even before your upgrade, you guys are working in your preview environment, you can get rid of the ones you don't need. And even when we do a refresh of your Vision data into that preview environment, we do that twice. Once we get a fresh one when we start working together, we'll do a refresh of the Vision environment with all the work we've done with design and overlay and everything. And then obviously when you go live again. So you can continue to, kind of chip away at the reports anytime after you get your preview environment. Like I said, all those ones that we've gotten rid of, when we do a refresh of Vision, they won't pull back in. The source of truth for reporting would be in your Vantagepoint preview environment. Same thing with your saved searches. So if you have saved searches in the database, whether they are global searches or personal searches, they will come over into Vantagepoint. They come over as SQL statements, so you can't get into the SQL statement to update them. So it's another opportunity to say, hey, are we still using that? Can we get rid of it? Should we rebuild it? Because, some of these are built off of opportunities, right? So which don't exist anymore. So it's a good time to look at all those things and say, put them through the Vantagepoint lens and say, we did have those searches, but we really need these searches to be a different format because now I have stages in my project. So I can say, show me all the active, regular projects that are at the awarded stage, right? So you start to think of your searches are a little bit more detailed just because you have more things you can kind of lean into. The next one here is going to give you the detail for all those saved searches. Global, create date, modification, right? Who has access to it. This one here is your contact duplicates. So this one's going to probably be a pretty long list just because although, the world's huge, within industries, it's a really small world, right? So people move around a lot. They go to different places. Mark here, or Mac, excuse me. He's been to he's got a bunch of different email addresses. Maybe he's changed titles, right? So, what we say about the contact duplicates is yes, of course, you want to clean up as much as you can. But honestly, when you get right down to it, it's not any bigger of a problem in Vantagepoint than it was in your Vision environment. So this is the one that I would say, work on the last, right? The duplicate contacts and clients and vendors, the vendor and client merge, your planning, your opportunities, those are where you want to focus. planned revenue, and file links. So this is just listing out all your file links. I mean, I think ever since they added the attachments tab in Vision, especially if you're in the cloud, most people are using that. We at my old company that I worked at before I worked here, we did a lot of file paths and links. And then somebody would come in from the IT department who's brand new and have a great idea about how the path should look, and then all of our links would break. What's nice about Vantagepoint is that you can drop and drag documents directly into the database. You can still scan things in and go look for them, but that'll allow you to kind of drop and drag that information in as well. So this is the full report, right? So you've got all these tabs along the bottom here. And then really, just to kind of talk about, how we typically take somebody from Vision to Vantagepoint is right. Step one, get that readiness report. It is really helpful. I'm really passionate about it because it kind of takes the mystery away of like, where should I look? What should I focus on? Really kind of gives you that roadmap. Planning and upgrade services. So as we work together, the first thing we want to talk to you about is how are you using Vision today, right? I mean, everybody has their own nuances, right? I mean, the package is a baseline, but then everybody else has bells and whistles, customizations that we want to know about, because some of them we might have to absolutely change just because of the way the system works. So we typically work in kind of 3 sets of meetings, if you will. For first one, planning. We're going to plan with you. This is after your readiness report. You decided you're going to partner up with Action. We're going to learn how you use Vision. Then we're going to get a preview environment at Vantagepoint. In that preview environment, we're going to go through all of your configuration. So it's actually settings in Vantagepoint, and go through your time and your expense, your accounting, your cash management, all those settings to make sure that we have the foundation of the database configured the way you want to. Now, all of your configurations come over from Vision to Vantagepoint, but this allows us to take a look at them and make sure that any new bells and whistles, improvements, enhancements that are in Vantagepoint, we are giving you best practices about what we see and how most of our clients are using it. And that way you have visibility into that. Like I said, data cleanup and optimization. So, we do run into clients that say we just don't have the bandwidth to do the cleanup options. So we'd like to hire Action to do the cleanup, right? You give us some guidelines around how you want us to clean it up, what methodology you want to use, and we kind of go through that process with you. That can happen really at any time, right? Whether it happens, a lot of things, depending on what it is, if it's transactional, you want to do it in Vision. If it's workflow, security, roles, users, along that line of the database, that happens in Vantagepoint, gets retained. And then, what we do after our configuration and settings, right, we go through and we test it with our core team, right? So that core team can then go through and test everything. And at that point, you're testing, but you're also defining your new processes. Because if you're using opportunities, you've got to flip the process a little bit, because the way the project lifecycle happens in Vantagepoint is very different than what we would have started with an opportunity in Vision, as well as kind of walking you through, the firm's hub and that change there, right? So we test everything. You guys, the core team says, yep, this is great. We've got our configuration. We've tested everything. We've signed off on that. And now we want to bring in our super users. So now you want to bring in a larger group, right? Up to 16 people that become kind of your Vantagepoint army, if you will, right? So that way, not all roads lead to the 4 or 5 people in the core team that have been working the whole time. Now we say, hey, super user group, we've done all this, we've done the configuration, we've worked out all the kinks, and now we want to present it to you, right? And through that group, they might say, ooh, can we move that field over there? It makes sense to do this, right? They're going to be another set of eyes with a little fresher opinion about it, because they're just seeing it for the first time. And then after the super users come in and they get trained, right, we're ready to go live. And we do a mock go live, or what we call a go live simulation. So that way we kind of act like we're going live. We walk through the process, make sure that nothing, no issues are kind of arise there. And then you go live. And then we're there for you post go live. Lots of our clients will say, we want to go live by a certain time frame. But we also want to have a phase 2, phase 3, right? Where phase 2, I might come through and say, we want to now do CRM, or we want to bring in project planning, or we want to start doing, activities or more CRM things in the database. So, the relationship for us is really important, right? We want to get you live, but we also want to stay with you as you grow and use the database. Right, and then we're off, launch support. So I do want to pull up Vantagepoint. I think it's helpful to see some of these things. So this is our demo database. If you have not seen Vantagepoint before, I'll just give you a little rundown here. On the left-hand side here is your navigation pane. So much like you had a navigation pane in Vision, all the fields are dynamic here, right? So if I start typing in the word time, I'm only going to get the results in my navigation pane that have the word time in it, right? So really nice functionality here, especially if you're an administrator and you have a full laundry list here in that navigation. They also have kind of reworked how some of the stuff comes through, right? So my stuff, right? All the things for the employee in here. You can have a favorites tab, right? So again, this is my full list. I can have a favorites tab and have things on here that I want to, I use often, or maybe things that I don't use as often, right? Even though I know where the undo posting is, and I know where, incomplete transactions are, it's actually quicker for me to just start typing in incomplete without having to go to utilities, transactions, incomplete posting. So the dynamic fields for me, they're a game changer in Vantagepoint. Hubs, what we talked about, so replacing info centers. One of the ones I want to show you is the firms. So firms is clients and vendors combined. So in firms, you see there's a little arrow pushing out. So that means that there's things below it. So this is the firm record. So whether you're a client or a vendor, I identify that in my navigation pane here. If I'm a client and a vendor, I share all of the tabs, but I get a vendor tab here. And the vendor tab gives me all the information that I would have to fill in for a vendor. So again, it shares the record, shares the addresses. So I would come in here and make it a vendor as well. So I would add one and I would make it my billing. So this one here just has the wall check, but this one here is going to be my billing. And then I would add another address for my payment. And that's how the system knows right on the checks, that's the address I want for my payments. And for my invoicing, take this address for my invoicing. So it shares everything here. But it also has, since it's firms and it's clients and vendors, it's got my AR review. So my full AR. So client-specific accounts receivable. And then vendor-specific information. You can see that the selection up here, I can toggle between clients and vendors, or I can just say, leave me on active. Show me all of them. As you kind of get into Vantagepoint, you'll start to use these selections pretty often. You can also then create new saved searches, right? So like I said before, all of your saved searches will come over. Some of these are ones that we've already created, but ones that actually come over as a SQL statement up here, and it's kind of locked out on you, so you can't do much there. The project record. So again, this is going to give you some insight into the future state, right? So I said opportunities go away, but there are some things kind of peppered in the record here that we're going to be, from the opportunities. So like the estimated fee, probability, and weighted fee. Right, so I would take projects through stages, right? And you can kind of, if you have CRM, you can kind of identify what these stages are, right? And you're taking the project through stages, sort of like you would take an opportunity through stages. And typically most clients will have this regular project here as you take it through what's considered in pursuit stages, and then have a promotional project that's collecting the costs, like while you're chasing the work. And when you win the work, this project goes alive here. So, but everything gets retained on the regular project, and the promotional project's really just out there to collect data. So once you get the preview environment, I wanted to show you, if you've done design in Vision, you know that there's a little piece of paper that you flip up in the corner here. In Vantagepoint, in any of the hubs, is going to be other actions or actions. and design. And the reason I point this out is because for me, when I was working in Vision, it was really tough sometimes to figure out what was a custom field versus a standard field. In Vantagepoint, anything that has a blue star is a custom field, right? So that way I can see these fields pretty easily. I'm not creating the custom field or grid in a different location. Everything happens right here in the design function. So if I want to add a field or add a grid or add a completely new tab, you do that all here. So all of these blue stars are, like I said, are custom fields that you've created in your database. And any standard tabs, so accounting and team and dates and costs are all standard tabs. Any custom field on those standard tabs in Vision, they will all get dumped to the bottom of this tab here. And then one of the sessions that we go through and say, okay, let's go through and say, do we need these fields? Do we want to hide them? Create a new tab that says do not use, right? And then really kind of customize the view of the data. I will say from a designability standpoint, like it's super easy, right? Just drop and drag. I can make them larger. You can have 3 columns in any one tab, but you can also have 4 and 5 columns, right? So they've given you a lot of designability here. So lots of things to look forward to when we get into Vantagepoint. This is just beyond your upgrade, right? So a lot of clients will do what's called an effectiveness review before they go into Vantagepoint, which is basically a lot of it coming from the readiness report, but really going through and saying, like, what are your policies? What are your procedures? Talking about, what do we need to do to maybe tweak those when we go into Vantagepoint? Usually that's an on-site visit from one of our principal consultants for a couple of days. Then you get a report from us. These are just some tools that we've created. So some billing terms automation. We have a master service agreement hub that Actions created, a professional licensing hub, forecast revenue, user maintenance hub. So these are all things that, these are add-ons. But, I know lots of people struggle with the master service agreements because there really isn't a good tracking process in Vantagepoint, even in Vantagepoint or in Vision. Questions? Will I lose my data? No. All your data is going to be coming over, including all your custom fields, right? So don't worry that you're going to lose anything. Even if you've been in Vision for as long as I was, everything will come over. Do you have to upgrade? Well, yes, at some point. So they have announced their sunset date, right? So that way, Vision is going to go into sustaining support February 1st of 2026. That means no code changes or maintenance, regulatory or security issues. So yes, they recently announced that sunset date. So at some point, we will have to kind of come over there as well. So that leaves us about, 15 minutes for questions?
Yep. We have one question right now.
Okay.
You may have covered this, but I'm going to read it out just in case.
Sure.
I don't know if this is a topic, but if not, we have heard that there is a huge advantage to go from Vision on-premises to Vision Cloud before moving to Vantagepoint for ease of conversion. Could you validate or speak to that process?
Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely. It's easier for Deltek and it's easier for you. So if you're on premises, they want you to go Vision Cloud. So what they'll do is they'll give you Vision Cloud licensing, and then you go to Vision Cloud. So it's really the same Vision environment. So there's no difference between Vision on the cloud and Vision on-prem. It's the only, how do you access it, right? So they'll give you what's called like a Vision sandbox in the cloud that you can test things in. So specifically, if there's like stored procedures or workflows that need to be looked at, that are, that were on premises that need to be tweaked, then they go to the cloud. We Action kind of provide, when we are supporting you to go to the cloud, we give you like a checklist, like check this many records, check these records, right? So that way you can then sign off on it and say, yep, everything looks good in the cloud. And then when you're ready to go to Vantagepoint, they just convert your licensing from cloud to from on-prem to cloud, from Vision to Vantagepoint. So yes, it is preferred, and I think Deltek's actually pushing for it to happen more and more as we get closer to the sunset date. So great question.
Perfect. Alrighty, I think that's it. And I kind of agree with him. I feel like you kind of covered everything that was really important. So
Well, it's funny. I saw the list on there, so I saw some familiar names. So I'm excited to see how things pan out for everybody. So, and again, if you need to get a hold of anybody, right, you can reach out to me, Don Brown at dbrown@action.com, or Melissa Pasinski, who is my manager. She was unable to make today's training, but she has a great resource as well. And at any time, you can reach out to the hotline at action.com. That's sort of our IT ticketing system. If you want a demo or you want to get a work authorization for a Vision to Vantagepoint upgrade, any of those people will get you in the right location.